From South Dakota. Good morning, Senator Thune. How are you?
Good morning, Imus. Doing well, thanks.
You know, I was just reading. I read The Last Stand, Nathaniel Philbrick's book about Custer's last stand in Montana with Custer and Sitting Bull and all those folks. And then I read Empire of the Summer Moon, which is a marvelous book, current bestseller, about Quanah Parker and the Comanches and the Plains Indian Wars, and talked a little bit about Sitting Bull, Crazy Horse, and the battle that ended the Plains Wars, the Battle at Wounded Knee, which, of course, happened in your state. So made me think of you.
Right. Good part of history. You should come and visit us out there. There's a lot to see, Imus.
I've been out there. I bought a saddle in Sioux Falls.
That's right. You told me that.
Yeah.
You told me that. Well, you got to come back.
So I was talking with Senator McCain yesterday, and he said if he'd have looked like you, he'd have won the election. And I said, well, there were a couple of other things that went off the rails. But why do you think he lost the election?
Senator McCain?
Yeah.
Oh, I think there was, unfortunately, he got caught up in an environment where people were blaming our party, the Republican Party, for what they perceived to be a lack of commitment to some of our principles when it came to fiscal responsibility. There was an economic meltdown. It was an environment that was just a very, very difficult one for him to overcome. There was a tremendous headwind. And, under different circumstances, I think he could have done extremely well. He's an incredibly, as you know, principled leader and great American hero. And I wish he would have won that election, but he's certainly someone that we look to for leadership in the United States Senate.
Doesn't look like exactly that he walked out of Phantom of the Opera anyway. He's not a bad-looking guy, so. I wonder if Sarah Palin helped him or hurt him. You want to handle that one?
History will judge all that, but all I know is that it would have been, I think, tough for any Republican in the last election to have won. And I think Senator McCain, as he always does, waged a very courageous campaign under very difficult circumstances, and I just wish it would have come out differently.
So these elections yesterday now, where it appears that there's been some sort of significant impact from the Tea Party, what do you make of that?
I think the message out of the elections yesterday and what we've seen in a lot of the primaries around the country is that people are extremely frustrated, they're angry, and they're afraid. They're afraid of this out-of-control government in Washington, D.C., which continues to take over more and more of our private economy. They're worried about the debt that's being passed on to future generations, and they want somebody to do something about it. And I think that is the one message that is consistent, and it's something I've heard across my state during the month of August, and I traveled in 10 other states during the month of August on behalf of other candidates, and that's a consistent message. People are fed up with out-of-control Washington spending and the runaway train that they perceive to be the federal government in Washington, D.C., and they want change brought to Washington, and people who will rein in spending, work on getting the debt under control, and work on creating jobs and growing the economy, which I think they believe the current administration, the current leadership in Congress is ignoring.
Well, didn't we all, maybe not you and not perhaps me, but didn't a lot of people, even people who didn't vote for him, think that that's exactly what was going to happen by electing President Obama?
I think a lot of people did. They got a pig in a poke. A lot of them thought that they were voting for someone who was going to be focused on jobs in the economy, and they got someone rather who was focused on creating and growing and expanding government here in Washington, D.C. The one thing the president has done fairly effectively has created lots of new federal government jobs in the bureaucracy here in Washington, but at the expense of creating jobs in the real economy, which is where most people live. And so you have the federal government growing at a time when we're shedding jobs in the real economy across this country. And I think a lot of people, at least that I talk to, think that they thought the president was going to be governed more from the middle. He was going to be a guy who sort of got it in terms of job creation, and what they have seen instead is someone who is governed from the left. And what I consistently hear is I didn't realize he was going to be that liberal. And I think a lot of people figured that out before the election, but a lot of them now figured it out after.
Well, I didn't think he was going to surround himself with the same rich white guys that Bush did. So, I mean, on November 5th, as Matt Taibbi pointed out, all he did was call all the people at Goldman Sachs and these other people got us in the mess in the first place. That's on November 5th, not when he was inaugurated. He called them then. So.
Well, that and a lot of the other people that he's populated his administration with are people who I don't think understand what it takes to create jobs on the main streets of America. He's got a lot of academics and a lot of people who come from places who really don't have that real world experience, and I think that's showing, and we're seeing that, and obviously the economy, I think, is reflecting that.
Are you a Tea Party guy, or do they like you? Or
Well, I hope they do. I'm certainly, I think, in line with the things that they believe in. In my view, what animates a lot of people who are active in the Tea Party movement is this concern about the size of government. I think that the Tea Party is extremely concerned about fiscal responsibility and the need to rein in Washington and get spending and debt under control. So those are things that I agree with them on 100%, and I hope that in the November elections, we will see a big turnout from people all across this country, like we've seen in some of these Republican primaries, and that they will send a message to Washington that they're sick and tired of the way things are being done here.
17 to the hour, talking with Senator John Thune from South Dakota. I probably asked you other times you've been on whether you're going to run for president or not. What did you tell me?
I probably told you, yeah, I don't remember what I told you then, but probably what I'll tell you now, and that is right now, like everybody, I'm focused on these midterms. I think the best thing I can do, Imus, to help change the direction of this country is elect more Republicans to the United States Senate, and so that's kind of where my focus has been.
So that doesn't mean, because if you weren't going to run, you would say, no, I'm not going to run. Like I asked Governor Chris Christie, who, by the way, I'm a huge fan of. And
He's doing a terrific job.
And I like everybody on both sides, by the way. I'm not one of those people who thinks the president's not a Christian or wants to see his birth certificate or that he's a bad guy. I think he's fine. You got to stop smoking and stop eating hamburgers and telling us that we all ought to eat Brussels sprouts. But, however, having said all of that, why wouldn't you? I asked Christie if he's going to run. He looked me straight in the eye and he said, "No, I'm not going to run. It's not going to happen." But you're not saying that.
Well, I'm not making any definitive Sherman-esque statements. All I guess I'm saying is that I think right now every Republican office holder in this country who is in a position to do so ought to be out actively working to try and bend the curve, so to speak, in the House and the Senate and trying to elect more Republicans. What we need here in Washington is more checks and balances, and we can't do anything about the president until 2012, but we've got a midterm election before that is going to determine largely, I think, whether or not we're able to get some, turn this, what I think, direction that we're on headed toward a train wreck, turn it around, and November's the opportunity to do that.
We're going to announce after your appearance that you have announced on this program that, in fact, you'll be in Iowa. Well, I was thinking about what McCain said. He said if he looked like you, he'd have been elected where you think there might have been a couple of other issues at stake. But you not only do you look like John Thune, you are John Thune. So you've got a leg.
Yeah, right. Well, I don't know about that. But I will say one thing. I think the country would be a lot better off if we elected John McCain, and like I said earlier, I certainly wish we would have.
Is your seat up in November? Or?
My seat is up in November.
Oh, okay.
I'm on the ballot this November, and so I'm running for re-election in the United States Senate. And
how does it
like
look?
I said, you have, well, it looks good,
okay.
But it would help. You guys, I can't tell you how many fans you have in South Dakota. I run into people all the time who are big fans of your show.
Thank you.
I'm reaching my constituents when I talk to you.
Well, the point is, it's pointless for us to develop a relationship with you if there's any possibility that you're going to lose. But if there's, it appears there's not. So it's a pleasure to have you on the program, and we look forward to another appearance.
Always nice to be with you, Imus, and I appreciate those thoughtful comments.
Thank you, Senator Thune. Senator John Thune, South Dakota, here on the Imus Wine program, 14 till the hour.